Meeting councillors, and welcome members of the gallery, members viewing in on live stream to the special meeting of today. We traditionally acknowledge the Darumble people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather for this meeting, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. There are no leave of absences or apologies. Any declarations of interest in this matter, councillors? Okay. Item 5, no business arising. Item 6, no presentation of petitions. Item 7, no delegate reports. Item 8, no notices of motions, questions or statements. We'll go straight to item 9.1, the report on the extension of the discount period. Madam CFO, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors. The original decision for the timing and issue of rates was set at the Council's special budget meeting held in June 23, and the decision was to set the due date for 30 days. Considerations in regards to setting the issue date and due date for payment are really around a number of factors. So the first one is around inching forward the issue date to closer align the rates and water, particularly the water consumption notice, earlier to the reads that are done. So the water consumption notice reads are done well in advance of the notices being issued, and Council has received feedback in the past around the length in time between the reads being done for the water notices and the receipt of the water notices themselves. Council has also in the past, by combining the rates and water notices for those yearly and half-yearly notices, has saved costs in regards to postage and stationery costs for combining those notices. The shortening of the due date was also to allow for some streamlining of our work processes in regards to debt recovery actions, as well as to increase the time available to process an increased flow of supplementary notices that officers are needing to process. So the longer the due date we have for notices, it reduces the amount of time that we have available to issue supplementary notices. Officers have also previously contacted all direct debit accounts with notice that the due date would be reduced from 35 days to 30 days. So should the officer recommendation be upheld or a different one put forth, we would also need to contact just over 1,900 ratepayers to advise them of what the new date for the direct debits would be to finalise those accounts. In order to reduce the risk in future of notices being received after the due date, Council will primarily actively promote the electronic notice delivery. Electronic notices either received through email or BPay were received on the date of issue. We'll also look to bring forward our internal deadlines by 1 week, which means that some ratepayers will receive notices before the issue date as well. So the officer recommendation is to restore the 35-day payment period for the current notice issue only.
All right. Thank you, Madam CFO. So just to be clear on that, we are proposing to restore the 35-day notice period for this particular round of rates notices, but going forward into future budget years, it will be returned to the 30 as was originally intended for this year.
Correct, Mayor. It's just for the current issue only. So the next water consumption notice will be back to 30 days, and then the next half-yearly notices, which will be issued in late January, will be also 30 days and retain the 30 days going forward. So the officer recommendation is just for the current notices only to be extended to by additional 5 days.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to Andrea and or the CEO. Is it also true that delays for the actual postage of these rates notices to recipients were due to delays with Australia Post? There's been some commentary on social media in relation to that.
I'm unable to comment on any issues from Australia Post. I can acknowledge that Council was 2 days late in finalising the print job with the provider. So Council is responsible for 2 days of the delays. I also understand that through our provider, Australia Post does operate on weekends from where they are issued, but we have not received any communication or feedback from Australia Post whether there was delays. I've also been advised by officers that we had received return mail before some ratepayers also received their rates notices, so I'm not quite sure of the Australia Post processing for some of that return mail as well. So we got that before some ratepayers even received their notices.
Sure. 2 more questions, Mr Mayor, if I may. Is there regulations or legislations that actually prevents council from extending the due date past the 5-day extension, such as giving some leeway to mid-September perhaps?
The only limitations with the regulation is that the due date cannot be any earlier than 30 days.
Okay, so it is quite possible in this case as an exception. And the other question that I have through you, Mr. Mayor, is our media department going to, before January's rates, are they going to be getting the word out there that people only have 30 days? Will this happen in this last part of this calendar year? So that was a yes. Okay, thank you.
I've got a question for the CFO, Mr. Mayor. Look, one of the things that I guess bemused me a little bit is that the rates this year, not only do we have the 5-day less period, but also they came out 10 or 11 days earlier than they have in the past 2 years. So the actual date of issue was the 31st of July compared to the 11th of August and the 10th of August. And what this has meant is that the rates, I think last year they were due by the 14th of September, and this year the 15th of September. So it's actually nearly a whole 2 weeks that people have had to, I guess, budget for. And Mr. Mayor, I would actually like to propose a foreshadowed motion.
Okay.
If this motion is either lost or alternatively as the substantiate motion. If I might pass that down. And,
Just up on the board, yep.
Justine, I didn't email it. I've only just. Yeah, I can read it out, but have I got another copy of it? Probably not.
Perhaps if we just wait for it to be typed on the screen, thanks.
Oh, I've got another copy of it, Mr. Mayor, here, but there's Justine gets it ready.
Okay.
And that's the pursuant to subsection 137 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. The Council will extend the 31 July 2023 rates and charges period for 14 days. Number 2, that pursuant to subsection 138, brackets 8 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, making these rates and charges payable on Wednesday the 13th of September 2023. I did put a third one in there, Mr. Mayor, but I'm not sure that that will actually be needed if I understand what we just spoke about. And that would be, Council will be consistent in the future in issuing its rate notices as close as possible to its previous issuing dates in each 6-month rating period. Just so that people who do try to work out their budgeting processes are able to know substantially when that rate notice is going to come out. It just makes it easier for those that aren't as fortunate as some of us are.
All right. Thank you. Can I just park that as the foreshadowed motion at this point? Is that it in complete form, Councillor Eastwood?
Nobody's interested in making that the substantive motion?
Motion, and it will become the substantive. It is the substantive motion.
Righto. Of course you can.
Just the CFO, sorry. Andrea, why did they come out earlier than usual?
So in the past, Council has received feedback in regards to the length of time between the issuing of the water consumption notices and the water reads. So because Council has also looked at opportunities to streamline processes and reduce costs where possible, a decision was made a number of years ago to combine the rates and water notices to be issued at the same time, because what our ratepayers were experiencing is that they were getting a water notice, rate notice, water notice, so we were trying to smooth the impact of receiving multiple bills in a short period of time. So as you can appreciate, it is quite difficult to pick the optimal time for the issuing of the rates notices. So there is a conscious effort that we are trying to bring forward the issue date of these notices to closer align or be as close as possible to the water read date. So that's where we've received a lot of feedback in the past from our ratepayers.
And does that save us money, or the Shire?
Combining the rates and water notices into one envelope certainly saves council money. What it would even save council even more money if more people were able to sign up for electronic notice delivery. So then we're not actually required. We avoid the printing and postage costs.
So what sort of saving?
From my recollection, the initial saving was about $12,000 when we did the original combining of the water and rates notices together. So the further we delay the issuing of the rates and the water notices, we just would have to accept that there will be a significant period of time between the reads of those water cycles and when the notices are issued to the ratepayers.
Let's ask one more question. If we're to go ahead with this, do the rates notices have to be printed again because they need a date for everyone to know when they will be due?
No, what we will have to do, however, is contact all of those customers that have signed up for direct debit to advise them of the new issue date. So we did that in advance of the rates notices being issued. We would not need to reissue, so the issue date would still be correct. However, we would certainly work with the marketing and communications team to make sure that ratepayers were aware of the new due date. And the changes in the system are relatively easy to do, so there's nothing fundamental that we need to amend in the system. It's actually the simplest of all of the fixes for this.
Councillor Friend, question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I do. Will the ratepayers be notified through text or email?
If we have those details, we could certainly contact them through those means.
Okay, and that would be far less of a cost than actually sending a letter?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, Mr Mayor, I suppose, is to Councillor Eastwood. A very good alternative motion.
Thanks, Councillor.
Number one, though, I'm wondering if one is superfluous because it says rates issued TARS a discount period for 14 days. But in the second point, you've noted Monday the 13th of September. So if number two was to become number one and number three, number two, would that not, because
You
it's...
could do that.
Because
I was just following the template of the
Yes.
officer's recommendation, which it was exactly that, but it had 5 days.
Yes,
So
I'm just thinking, well, 14 days wouldn't take it.
Sorry? You happy to respond, Mr.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Councillor Friend. The legislation actually requires that the resolution be made in both parts to satisfy the subsections within section 130.
So 14 days would actually be sufficient to take us through to the 13th of September.
We would actually need to have both of those parts. So we need to have part 1 and part 2 of the resolution just to align with the legislative requirements for this these amendments to be made after the budget.
Okay,
Adoption.
thank you.
Councillor Bello.
Yeah, just to clarify, the initial officer's recommendation there, number one, extending the period by 5 days, so I understand that's primarily or specifically for this rating cycle, and then the rates that are going to be due in January, are they going to be extended by the 5 days in that proposed one, or is it reverting back to the 30 days and being issued somewhat earlier than previous years, as Councillor Eastwood's pointed out?
So for clarity, the officer's recommendation only pertains to the current issue. All other notices, so water consumption notices and future half-yearly rates notices, would be issued in accordance with the budget resolution made on the 13th of June, which is 30 days.
And potentially then, I guess, if that's not supported today, maybe to a slightly lesser extent, but we may well be here considering a special meeting if we feel that, or we see the amount of frustration in the community that comes around in the January rating cycle if we don't potentially deal with that at this point in time. So I guess that's the benefit of the second motion in my regard at this point in time.
I think the second motion is the one we're going to vote on.
Yes.
It's become the
Well,
substantive motion. Is that correct?
Councillors, can you direct your comments through the chair, please?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
And I'd certainly be happy to second that, the second motion, Councillor Eastwood's, in the event that that makes it live on the table.
All right, so
issue as soon as possible, which is what we intend to do. It's just won't reconcile the 5 days.
So we good, guys?
And just one further question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Just on the challenge of having purely electronic rating notices, I suggest we're probably a little way off. Whilst it's aspirationally good, but we've seen with the dump vouchers, which we have gone purely electronic, and there's no paper-based versions anymore. That's correct?
I've got one.
If you, yeah, but ultimately they're purely electronic. So that's not the case.
You can still print them out, councillor.
You can still go and get them. Yep. But ultimately they're not provided to the ratepayer initially with the rate notices anymore. They're purely electronic. So I think we're a fair way yet off purely electronic rating notices at this point, and that's whereby I certainly will be supporting the second version for some of those reasons. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, just another question. Looking at the differences between the two recommendations, the first one's point 1 is an extension for 5 days.
Yeah.
The second is to extend to 14 days. Am I really reading that correctly, Councillor Eastwood?
That's right, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Point 2 is to the 13th of September, which is confirming the date. And point 3 is just the consistency going forward. All
That's
right.
right, Mr Mayor.
So, Madam CFO, in extending it, if the second recommendation was supported at the table, what are the impacts, potential impacts on the finance team?
So with both recommendations, the impact on the direct debit account holders would be the same. We would need to contact them with with the new due date of
Yep.
their payments and ensure that they're able to pay on the new due date. Some might have obviously made adjustments to accommodate the new due date, so we'll work with those ratepayers to ensure they're suitably across the new due date. It'll be the same approach in terms of the communicating through print media, social media, through other channels, through the marketing and communications team. The flow-on effects will be that we will be unable to issue supplementary notices. So we're already, after the last, we've got quite a substantial number of supplementary notices to issue. So we can continue to do that work, but they cannot be issued until this particular due date has passed. So it will delay that process. It will also delay in commencing any debt recovery actions. So generally they are the ratepayers that find themselves in situations where they're most difficult to pay. So actually delay those actions in supporting those ratepayers in managing their debt to council.
All right, thank you. Is everyone clear, councillors? All right, I've got a mover in Councillor Eastwood. We'll take the foreshadowed motion as the substantive motion at this point. Seconder, please. Councillor Bello. Councillor Eastwood, do you want to speak to the recommendation?
Yeah, I would like to, Mr Mayor. I guess sometimes we get it wrong, we stuff it up, and this is to fix things up and to make things easier and better, particularly for those in our community that are on pensions or low incomes that really struggle and do go from pay to pay. And it's really, really important that we always look after those people, as we're endeavouring to do with low-cost housing, etc. And it's just important that we continue to look after them in whatever, yes, with the things like the Anglicare and the, I can see a nodding of that, a shaking of the head, St Vincent de Paul stuff. You know, we are trying to look after our people in our community that aren't doing it so well. On this, we passed down a pretty good budget, and 98.45 or 47% of ratepayers paid rates under CPI. So, and when I have been just, I wasn't going to go on social media, but I actually did get an alarm from my wife who sort of said, hey, you better go and have a look at this. And most people were most concerned, people aren't concerned about the rate rise. People who've been ringing me up haven't been concerned about the rate rise. They expected that. They expected that. They knew that CPI was through the roof, and we did a really, really good job. But what they were concerned about is the timing. They just did not have time to pay their rates. They'd worked things out, and it just came as a bit of a shock. And sometimes we can say, look, you know, I have had a bit of a look of how we've advertised, but sometimes it just goes past us. I know we all live busy lives. I know my wife, she somehow didn't realise that they were going to be so early, and we've got 2 lots of rates, and it knocked us around. You know, councillors' wage isn't that much, and when you've got a couple of lots of rates, 3 lots of rates, it actually, wasn't easy to get that all at once. So all I ask in councillors is you endorse this. I think it makes a lot more sense. It's definitely going to make it a lot easier on our ratepayers, and it's going to make it probably easier on us in the future to make sure that we keep our dates set around the same time. So thanks with your considerations, and I'd like to wrap up at the end too, Mr Mayor.
Anyone speaking against? Councillor Mather.
The first one, council will extend the 31st of July for the issuing of rates notices. They're already out. How can we change what already has occurred?
That's just been explained by the CFO, Madam Councillor Mather. I'll get her to explain it
I
again.
do apologise for my lateness, Mr Mayor.
So with both resolutions, so even the foreshadowed by Councillor Eastwood, the motion that's live by Councillor Eastwood. So it is the issue date. You are correct, Councillor. The issue date can't change. So what the recommendations are proposing is to extend the due date, and that is what this resolution is proposing, to extend the due date. So the issue date will remain the same, being the 31st of July, which you're able to do so because Council also did adopt the budget in June and not in late July this year.
And a further question, Mr Mayor. By extending the due date another 14 days, what sort of impact would that have on our income? Because once we get our rates in, that goes into the bank and we gain interest on that. 14 days with a multi-million-dollar investment would be substantial, I imagine. Do we have any idea what that would be?
Well, that was asked as well, Councillor Mather, but to the CFO, essentially, I'll attempt to encapsulate. There'll be contact made with the various ratepayers who pay electronically. There will be media around that extension that's proposed in this resolution. It will delay the issue of supplementary notices, and it will delay any actions we take in recovering outstanding rates. So there will be cash flow timing issues, Councillor Mather, but at this stage, that's all the CFO has identified.
Thank you.
Councillor Friend.
Yes, I have a quick question, Mr Mayor. Perhaps the CFO can answer it. How many people within our ratepayers actually receive their notices electronically? Do we have an approximate number?
I can certainly get you the exact number after the meeting, but I thought it was at least 3,000, maybe between 3,000 and 5,000. I think that do receive it electronically, whether that's through email distribution or through BPay. It is a slowly increasing number, and there are certainly opportunities to increase or improve, and that's certainly a target area of focus for the team over the next 12 months.
Councillors, anyone speaking against? Would anyone else like to speak for?
I will, Mr Mayor, thank you. Reluctantly, may I say, I've been taking calls today. In fact, I've been on the phone since 5 o'clock. When we say that 97 or 98% of the people received an average of whatever rate rise, the people up my way, one fellow has got a bill of $9,000 extra over his already $91,000 that he's paying. When we say that most people are happy, we've got some very unhappy people out there. We've got a whole lot of work to do. And it's not just the due dates either. Because most people have a system where they know the rates are coming in, where they know when they can pay, or they have somebody organise it for them. Other people, they take it on when their budget comes in, when their pension comes in, and they go from time to time, and they don't have a system at all. And I guess we've got to cater for those people too. But I think we need to widen our scope as to how many people are being affected. And one of the questions that I had come to me today is, we always have to pay by the middle of September. And I'd go with this resolution today because of that. I don't like the thought of having to delay income. It means a loss of money for our ratepayers. If we don't have the money, we don't have the banking. Everything is delayed. And although this might be a one-off, I'm sure we'll do our best to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I'm just asking you to bear with me with a lot of people who are paying a lot of money. It means that they have to sell 50 calves just to pay for the increase. And if the cattle prices are down, they have to sell more calves. So let me say that we can't smart on this one because we've got a lot of catching up to do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Anyone else, or anyone speaking against? Want to speak against? All right. Well, I'll speak in favour of it, councillors. Notwithstanding the comments made by Councillor Mather in relation to the quantum of some of the increase in rates, this issue is different. It's about the timing for the discount period. And I'm not diminishing the impact of some of the valuation increases in the northern part of the Shire, which have contributed to those very significant rate increases for some of the graziers in the north. I am aware of 2 cases, one of which is the valuation has increased from approximately $6.6 million to over $10 million. In reality, councillors, with the current rating structure that we have, we all know that it really is, it doesn't matter how much you tweak the rate in the dollar, there's still going to be a significant impact when you have a valuation increase of that magnitude. So I'm going to support this, councillors, because not necessarily so much because of the impact on the valuations, although it is a significant issue. I am going to support it because there is a delay in us getting these rate notices out. That is the fundamental issue here, and we have to accept responsibility for that. And I know the officers, sometimes these things are out of their control as well. But certainly I think we need to be cognizant going forward that we try and get this as close as possible as we can, and hence point 3 within Councillor Eastwood's proposed resolution there, I think, is the salient one here, although clearly there will always be extenuating circumstances which we have to take into account. Anyone else wish to speak?
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, certainly echo your comments there, especially that in relation to that the staff have done the very best they can, which we see over and over again. So commend them for their actions through the whole budget process, the whole budget cycle, and the alchemy that sort of is required to produce a budget. We've all walked through that fairly painstakingly, and it is difficult when we hear of the big rate increases in some of those properties in the north. We talked about potentially rate capping at 10%, because unfortunately some of those have once again gone well above that. But putting that aside, I guess for the unintended consequences that have come from this this process really is just a delaying in those rate notices landing in people's letterboxes. As councillors, we have the ability, and thankfully the special meeting was called, and I commend Councillor Eastwood for putting forward something that I think the community will be relieved that this council does listen. You know, whether it's listening on social media or just people ringing you up, we do listen and we do try and pivot where we can. And this does have the ability to do that. There will be, no doubt, some negative impacts in terms of interest that we would receive. But given the cost of living challenges that are out there, we did have a 6% rate increase. We're working hard to go from number 2 in the state down to about number 8. I hope that we don't jump back up to number 2 or 3 or 4, but whatever it takes to try and mitigate some of the anxiety and stress that people are facing out there, I believe that's upon our shoulders to do. That's why I'll be supporting this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Friend?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also support this resolution and commend Councillor Eastwood for bringing this forward to the table today. What we've seen so far is a perfect storm, perfect negative storm in the fact that we had an early budget adoption, therefore the bills went out, the invoices went out quite quickly, quicker than normal. We also had a 2-day delay from our printers getting them out there, and notwithstanding any issues that may have been to do with the post, because we don't know those things. So I actually support this terribly because the people are doing it hard and they need some relief, and this is what we need to do. So thanks very much again, and I endorse it.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Eastwood, do you want to wrap up?
Just quickly, Mr Mayor, I think I've got a fairly good indication this may be supported. If anyone is sitting on the fence, I ask that maybe you jump over the fence to the 14 days. I think it's a good, well, I don't think, I know it's a good move. It's a good move for those in our public, and we need to look after our people, and if we look after our people, they'll look after us, as in we'll be able to promote a council that cares, that not only whether it be rates, but every single aspect of what we do in this community needs to be about those people that are our constituents. So please support this, and that's about it, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. All right, councillors, we'll close debate.
Just amended it to Wednesday the 13th, because it's Wednesday the 13th,
Yep.
not Monday.
Okay. All right. So just take note of a slight amendment there in point 2, councillors. It's Wednesday the 13th. Previously, it was shown as Monday the 13th. Yeah, it was on the original one. It was Monday the 13th. Wednesday's correct. All right, councillors, we'll close debate. We've got a mover, Councillor Eastwood, seconded Councillor Bello. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And as that's the only item on our agenda today, we'll close the meeting, and thank